While recording is in progress, this is Andrew Williams Jr. and another Conversations with Andrew Williams Jr. And in this particular case, we're dealing with Pato Banton and his lovely wife, and we're talking about the Ubuntu network. But first, we're going to, I hope, be able to talk a little bit about your upcoming events, because the idea is that, just to give you a little background there, I'm Googleable as Ambassador Andrew Williams Jr., not because of an appointment by a diplomatic corps, but by a group called globecal.net. In 2009, they established the Google ambassadors, Facebook ambassadors, and LinkedIn ambassadors. And I was one of the first 200 Facebook ambassadors appointed back in 2009. But since that time, I've actually been appointed as an ambassador for multiple organizations around the world. And I've also appointed ambassadors. In 2015, I appointed 100 Goodwill ambassadors for the organization for which I was just named president then, 5 Points Youth Foundation here in Los Angeles. And we were focused on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and particularly the Caring for Climate campaign. And the idea was to create a worldwide resiliency network. So we were able, just in a matter of a few months, from September 21st, which is International Day of Peace, through the end of the year, to actually get 50,000 unique hits on social media, on SlideShare, to raise awareness about that campaign. Looking forward, though, in 2019, the same energy drove me to want to do more than just have Goodwill ambassadors that says, hey, yeah, that's a good idea. The intent was to actually have regional ambassadors that speak multiple languages. For example, our first one was in Cabo Verde, a very small island off the east coast of Africa. But the ambassador there, Janice da Silva, she speaks not just Portuguese, but also French, Spanish, and English. But she was a 22-year veteran of the UN Habitat. She believed that by working from the ground up is the only way we can actually achieve the goals to leave no one behind. Mm-hmm. She was the first of my ambassadors. I've appointed others, a dozen others around the world, here in the United States or Canada. The representative there, he's responsible for not just Canada, but the Francophone speaking countries, as well as what they call Turtle Island, which is the indigenous people here. Yes. And of course, the Commonwealth of Nations, because not just in January 1st of last year, it wasn't just the African Continental Free Trade Area that went into effect. It was also Brexit that went into effect. So now, as you see, there's splintering around the world, but that's where I hope that through a spirit of Ubuntu, we can kind of bring all these together. Mm-hmm. Just on a personal note, even though I may look strong and healthy here, I'm a survivor of multiple strokes, and I'm disabled. I can't walk, can't breathe, but I can talk. So that's what I do. Mm-hmm. And in August 1st of 2020, I was actually inducted as a prince in the Igbo Palace in Accra, Ghana, although I haven't been able to travel there yet. Mm-hmm. And then on August 20th, I was inducted as a prince in the Akan Kingdom. So even though I come from very humble beginnings, I was born in Macon, Georgia, in the poorest part of the town, but I was born.
We lost your sound.
I began speaking in competences at 18 months. And my mom started having me read at 3 years old. So I'm an only child. She was 40 years old. So the books were my toys. But also, she provided me with newspapers from around the country, from Atlanta, from New York, from Los Angeles. And that's how I learned about Leimert Park here in Los Angeles. That's where I moved here from Georgia in 1980. I've been here since then because this place is the heart of the African-American culture in the West Coast, around the world, and heart of the economic development for all that. So I've been blessed to have created what's called the Andrew Networks since 1984. It started out as a community think tank, a grassroots think tank. And the idea was to have a community resource of the people in the community. But we had to have the kids to identify what their strongest talent, skills, and abilities were, but also what they'd be willing to teach other people. And so that was in 1984. I've grown that network. I still have the first founding members, Gail McKenzie. She's still among my network members. She may be important to both of you. It was she who brought James Brown to Africa. It was she who brought Akon. It was she who brought many of the African artists, the artists from America to Africa, beginning in Gabon, where eventually she was the attaché to the chief of staff, and I was her communications director. So I've been deeply involved with the activities of Africa all that time. But the reason why it's so important now that I bring you together is because in 2011, I was introduced to a woman named Lady Alicia Hamilton. And she, in 2003, had been walking behind her son's cartoon and was shocked by the graphic violence and sex. But even though she was dyslexic, she created her own network focused on the Revelation Network, primarily faith-based content, because her husband was a pastor. As a matter of fact, he's Alexander Hamilton, who just was recently awarded for being the producer of Aretha Franklin's Amazing Grace album. But she created that in 2003. I met her in 2011. And unfortunately, by then, it was clear that the religious community were afraid of what she was bringing, because she was bringing transparency and openness to all faiths. Even though she was a Christian, she was opening up to everyone. So in 2017, she actually cloned that into the Universal Citizens Media Network to reach a wider audience. So I've been involved with her all that time. The challenges that she's faced have been monumental. Just in 2019, as we were about to launch, she went to a chiropractor to help with her back, because her husband, unfortunately, he was a stroke survivor as well. So she had to lift him up and take him, and she hurt her back. The chiropractor actually broke her back, broke her vertebra. But when they went to the doctor, they found that she had stage 4 cancer. So because they were able to catch it early, they were able to then successfully treat that. She's still in treatment now, but at the same time, her network was hacked. It was taken down offline. So she had to and she's the only reason why she was able to survive the .com bust and all that stuff is because she's her own technician. So she didn't have to hire people, and then she didn't have to pay people. It was her, right? But she made a commitment to move beyond the idea of just reaching people on the internet. So 2 years ago, she made the commitment to go online with Amazon Fire and Roku 2 years ago. She's been carrying that burden ever since. And she's afraid to go because she doesn't have content. So she's brought me in. I've been her counselor and also her a corporate advisor for all that time. She's given me permission to try out my own idea, which is to empower each person by syndicating content from people that have existing influencers and content, but don't have a global audience. This is a private network. It's not like YouTube, where the next thing that you see might not be something you want to see. This is strictly private. So, for example, with what you're doing, you could actually have subscribers that come to you. They're your subscribers. Now, she's built up over 125,000 double opt-in subscribers already with her network. So they're going to be grandfathered in. Even though there hasn't been recent content, she's had over 1 million hits every month for the last 8 years. Just people coming to, hey, where are you? So the task before today is that I have been, again, I have no experience in the music business, but Silky D. Williams, she's one of the original hip hop pioneers. She trusts me to be her manager, right? So 7 years ago, she said that. But just yesterday, she reminded me that I have that hat to wear. And so with Alicia, I have the power to have 8 hours of programming that she believes is going to be the flagship. What I'm convinced is that if I can have an hour each for influencers, particularly under Ladylike Entertainment, which is Silky D's company. So then I'm following through my responsibility as her manager for making that happen. I'm following through on my commitment to Alicia by making that happen. But I'm also following through my own commitment, because reggae is very important to me. Reggae was announced as a cultural, intangible cultural heritage by UNESCO several years ago.
Yes.
So the idea is that just last August the 2nd, for the first time ever, there's now a permanent forum for people of African descent. But it's up to us to take the lead and bring all those billions of people into what we're doing. So my belief is that what your planned events coming up this year could become the focal point for us to drive forward the rest of the year and beyond through the remaining decade for people of African descent that's coming up in 2024. And here's the thing. So for example, today, right now, I have 4 women. This is going to be ladylike entertainment. So even though, men will be involved, right, it'll be the ladies that are there. So that's why I wanted to make sure I introduce myself to both of you to let you know that I'm here for you and I'm here to support you. But it has to be the lady-like entertainment group. So
Yes, that's fine.
even though you may have been in the background, it's time for you to step up. I'm here to let you know, young lady, it's your time.
This is so awesome. This is really actually perfect timing because since this year had started and since my diagnosis from last year, I felt that this is the time of the rise of the divine feminine. And this is actually what I've been kind of curating and been working on, was how we were going to start advertising and how we were going to start putting it out there, what this rise of the divine feminine actually looked like. This work that Pato and I are doing with Ubuntu, there's a ton of things. I have so much content. It's not even funny how much content that I actually have. Well, yeah, but it's still, but I'm looking at your network and all the things that you're talking about, so with reggae, even though we're both reggae musicians and reggae ministers and reggae artists and ambassadors of the golden rule that was appointed by Musi over in Africa, as that's why we use the music and the entertainment. There's the umbrella of the amount of things that we do is besides as entertainers. So we're musicians, we're entertainers. We spread the good news that we're all God's children, brothers and sisters through the music, but we're also interfaith ministers, which it also entails that Pato does weddings, baptisms, funerals, different things. And then my thing is basically about promoting religious freedom. So that's been my thing. Even though I'm a follower of Christ, I think that the road, and I think that's where the spirituality of the women are coming back. It's there's a whole new world out there that these people don't know about. The other thing too is that I started a nonprofit organization called Stand Up for Justice in the state of California. So that is our social justice work. We've held the Juneteenth this year and last year. So we've held the largest in the state of California, in Southern California, as as organizers, independent people saying, we besides singing about what we do, we also want to be active in what we do. And also, which led a campaign called the Jane Campaign, which is about a friend of mine she's a mother of an autistic son, and about how the police response and different things. And we've kind of started working on this campaign with the police here in Riverside County. And now that they've actually initiated and made this as part of their policy, we're trying to push this into law for the entire state. And then Pato and I also just purchased some acres of land here in Southern California, where we're building a spiritual retreat and eco center and eco village, where we're trying to promote health and wellness, save the environment, planting the trees, all the different things here. And that's all led by us as well too, but through music, but also through active engagement.
Well, all that's wonderful. And what I'm hoping that can happen is that we can actually now begin to bring into our individual efforts the collective power of our extended networks. For example, in this particular circumstance here, one of the people that actually brought this into fruition, her name is LaTanya, and she's the creative director for Silky D. Williams. She happened to have been connected with me for several years ago, but it was only day before yesterday that when I was in the car with my good friend Remus Muhammad, that we were able to talk to her and realize that they had been connected for years and decades. So the idea is that her expertise is in providing the support network for people like yourself to get things done. That's what she's doing for Silky D. Silky D recently herself was a victim of a stroke. She's a stroke survivor. So
Mhm.
she's actually, still working full time, but her dream is to be able to generate enough income so that she can step out on her own based on her own background experience. And we want to make that the model that we provide for all young women and men in the hip hop and reggae worlds together. But
Mhm.
specifically today, for example, it was Lady Dread in 2012 that when I had to go to Bermuda, she carried on and produced an event at the Chaos Network here in Leimert Park on my behalf. So
Mhm.
again, that's another one. But what I'm asking you guys to do is take the other half of what I've got right now. Right
Mhm.
now, I've got the hip hop team. Right, I've got
Right.
Tina Tyler. Her major event is Hip Hop for Justice. So that
Yeah.
aligns perfectly with. And then every September 21st, like last year, she had Nadala Mandela, among others, to participate with their event. So
Right.
that's the kind of linkage I'm hoping to bring together with you guys on one side and them on
Mhm.
the other,
Oh,
and let's
wonderful.
take the world and again map out our own plan and destiny for the rest of our lives. That's
Mhm.
the game I'm in. I'm
Mhm.
a dead man talking, right? I'm 63 years old. I'm at 50 years old. I decided I spend the next 50 years doing what my mama told me to do, which is bring people together. So
Mhm.
in a way, this is my own ministry. Now my
Mhm.
name is Andrew. I didn't choose that, but I have throughout my life been the door opener for people. Just as Andrew opened the door for Peter to Jesus, I
Mhm.
open the door for people to achieve their dreams. I myself, however, have left myself out. So I need your help to help me help us to make this thing happen.
Mhm.
That's what I'm asking you to do to help me help us to make this thing happen.
Well, we can do that. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I really do have a special place. I mean, Leimert Park is something, when I first came from New York and I played in Leimert Park with Gregory Isaacs back, um, I used to work with him back in New York. That's one of the reasons why, like coming out to California, like leaving the East Coast to the West Coast, because of the way that reggae and the influence and how it was thriving on the West Coast differently from the East Coast. It's like and it's changed. And you've seen what's happened within the change now that it's kind of to come out of our hands now because it's now in the Cali Roots hands, and different things. So but it's not too late because this is still our music, and it still belongs to the people. And it's just basically on how you plan on like recreating or creating that same type of culture, because we kind of see the gentrification that's happening within Los Angeles. That's one of the reasons too why we're also out this way as well. We see it happening. It's happening all over.
Well, the Gregory Isaacs Foundation was turned over to Thea Roots, who's known as Kirsten Allen. She's in Germany, but I'm on.
Mhm.
She had Africa Rise Up, so I've been on that team for the last 10 or 15 years. So
Mhm.
again, our task is to bring to light all these cultural icons. And just to let you know, in Bermuda, of all places, they actually tracked the change through the music and entertainment in Bermuda called Birth of a Trust. And
Mhm.
that was a team that actually invited me there to Bermuda to spend almost 8 months in 2012. That's why I couldn't be there with Lady Dread. But
Wow.
we have roots throughout the world. All I'm saying is that let us verbalize and document this as our journey, as
Mm.
our way of chronicling our lives as they come together, so our children can see that we're all interconnected and empower them. As you may know, here in Los Angeles, we have a $1 billion uh, narrative museum that's being built, right? But that's going to be empty unless it has us in it. So I'm just suggesting that
Mhm.
everything we do tie all that together. That's my suggestion.
That's
That,
awesome. That's awesome. And it's very crazy because just this week alone, the old group that I used to be in called Whirler Girls is now getting back together. We were the all-female reggae band that performed at Sumfest. On the front page cover of the Gleaner magazine, it was like an all-female band, and it was so crazy because it's like they had never seen anything like it. This is all women performing in Sumfest. This is back in the early 90s. Yeah, all female reggae band. And so they're getting back together. I'm like, this is great because Sidney Mills is producing them and he's been with Steel Pulse for a number of years. And then I see another article, a friend of mine, I was her musical director. I started working with as MD for Roller Girls, and then I also MD'd for another group called True Mystic. This woman went on to Easy Star All Stars, became huge, but she finally released her own album after 20 years. Now it's on the front thing of Roots Fire magazine. It's like this big up. And then she puts in there that I was her mentor, you know, from back in the early days. And I'm like, but her voice is incredible. She's like huge. Then on top of that, Girls Town, Copeland Forbes, I'm sure you know who he is. He's finally come out with his autobiography. You know, he's the one who was a manager for Marcia Griffiths, Peter Tosh, Gregory, all of the big hitters, Luciano, everybody. He's finally releasing his documentary, his autobiography, Reggae is My Life. And he did a whole section because I was MD with Girls Town, another all-female reggae band, 10-piece all-female band. We went and backed up Marcia Griffiths, went to Japan, did the Japan Splash, 100,000 people. You know, that's all within his book. There's a lot of stuff that's that finally they're starting to come around, but we just been hidden for so long that, you know, but it's been there. It's been there for decades, but nobody's ever been talking about it until we're finally starting to do that now. That was one of the reasons why I started to work on my autobiography, started getting these things out, because the other thing too was these women were also behind the scenes with other artists for so long, but it's just finally they're getting recognized as individual and unique artists, which they should have been from the long time. But the new generation, they get the push up, you know, all the money, the effort, everything is behind, you know what I'm talking about.
Too well, too well. I'm going to share my screen briefly
Sure.
to get down to the nuts and bolts. Now, with Lady Alicia Hamilton, we worked together till 3 o'clock this morning to get this ready for you. Not that it's just for you, right? But it needed to be done. But this is the incentive for us to do it. What she's done is she's put together a rate card for empowering people to have their own shows or their own channels on her network. And the idea is that it would be like a time bank. So, for example, here on I'll send this to you, by the way. But for example, on weekday, on the morning slots, it's like on weekdays, it's like $600 per hour. And then on weekends, it's $300 per hour. Now, what that means is that I send it over to Pato, every 60 minutes on a wheel, setting aside 12 minutes of that time for commercials, for, you know, public service announcements, for, you know, whatever you're going to do, leaves you 48 minutes of programming. What I'm hoping to do is have 48 minutes of educational programming or content that's educational, instructive, you know, curriculums, those kind of things, but have those other 12 minutes to promote whatever it is that we're doing, our own nonprofit organizations, our own activities. And eventually we won't have corporations come in and buy us out of our own time. So that what's left is the programming of our content that other people are paying for. I mean, that's in a nutshell. But here's the thing. in your capacity as entertainers, in a lot of cases, you've had to have sponsors that are willing and able to pay as much as $1,200 an hour instead of $600 per hour, for example. What we're able to do is provide you with your own channel or your own broadcast network at the indie pro level. So that means that there's a revenue sharing component where anything above what it is that your hourly cost, you basically share it with the studio, right? So if you have your own 48 minutes of programming and 12 minutes talking about what you're doing, and a corporation wants to come in and replace your stuff with their stuff, and they pay you twice as much as you are paying, then we split that on a 50-50 basis, or 80-20 or 20-80, however that works. But the idea is that we're not even being concerned about that, because we have the network and we need the content. So if you guys could handle, in my mind, like half of what we're doing. So we got half of hip hop and half of reggae right now. Of course, there could be other stuff later, but right now I'm just looking at these 8 hours, and I'm just trying to fill these 8 hours up as quickly as possible. Say yes every week for the next at least the end of the year, preferably a year, we know that this slot is going to be filled and somebody's going to fill it. And
Right.
so
So how
that's
did
what,
the rates, who is paying these rates? Is it that we rent the studio, or you pay us this for the providing the content?
well, here's the thing. I'm going to again send this over to you. The model is basically we're like used to be CNN or ABC or whatever. So the model is that we're selling time. We have time on the network. We're reaching, you know, as I said, not just 125,000 subscribers. This project is designed to go to Roku and Amazon Fire. So the idea is to reach hundreds of millions of people. So it's just that because of the situation right now, what we're saying is that we don't really need your money as much as we need your commitment to provide our content, right?
Mhm.
So as far as the details of that concern, I'll introduce you to a lady, Alicia Hamilton. You guys can work that out. But
Okay.
my task, the task I'm undertaking, is to try to achieve a narrative that we can both understand and then both articulate, so that we not just understand, we're co-creating this as we go. That's what we're doing, right?
Mhm.
And I'm just really kind of sharing this with you because we work so hard just to get something that would be reasonable these rates are the same we set up for the online when it was only supposed to reach the internet audience. So this is
Mm,
an astronomical leap of being able to reach a wider audience. But here's
true.
the thing.
Except for that he already, but the thing is with Pato's name and all already with him already as influencers already, he already has like a base where they pay him for content. You know, both of us are both being paid for content because of the audience that they're able to reach. If we were starting off, you know, like if I was like 19 or 20 years old or something, and I just needed to get out there or something, then that would be different, because then it's like I have to go and buy the time or to be able to reach, because nobody has ever heard of either one of us or something.
We're not talking about that content.
Okay. It's a
We're
different.
talking about your content, you as an individual, your nonprofit activities, the things that you care about, your causes. We're
Mhm.
talking about that content. We're talking about the kids that you've helped. We're talking about the mentors that you raised. We're talking about your autobiography. We're talking about content that's not publicly marketable. We're not talking
Right.
about your music. We're talking
Mhm.
about your life. We're talking about what's valuable to you. We're talking about you as a mentor. So the whole idea is that our children need to see us, see them in ourselves, but
Mhm.
unless we're there, they can't see us.
I
So
agree.
the
Mhm.
content I'm really talking about is is it's not your intellectual property. I'm not asking you to share something that you could get paid for.
Right.
I'm hoping that what we can do is create a place where we can allow our children to have the same access that you now have to tell your story and to be able to learn how to better polish yourself and to learn how the business works and, you know, do all those things. Create your ebooks. Be the ones that have your webinar content. Be the ones that have your Zoom on Facebook with, you know, X number of people that are suicidal and they need to hear somebody that's gone through that. That's
Mhm.
the kind of content we're talking about.
Right. The ministry part of aspect of that. Yeah. But
Yes.
mhm.
So that's my pitch.
Mhm.
It's not so much about it's not so really it's not so much about the your influencer as a musical producer, but your influence as a minister, as a healer. So we're
Mhm.
trying to really have a healing network is what we're trying to get to.
Like Gaia. Mhm.
Yes, because of course Gaia is the living planet and everything on it in the entire universe. I'm not confused.
Right. Mhm. I gotcha.
But so yeah, that's and again, this is just me having a conversation with you because of the resonance I feel and the connections that are happening. And all I'm trying to do is share what I have with everyone we have because it either is I'm useful or I'm useless. So I'd rather be useful as possible and to also do all I can to convert these dormant resources into valuable intellectual property for the person is holding it, but also for our children to see that they can do this too. So I'm
Mhm.
asking you to be the sample of an example, basically.
Awesome. All right then. All right. Well, we'll look forward to looking at the rest of the information.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I'll go ahead and I recorded this. I'll send this to you. I'll send this to Alicia so you know she can see who you are. Then when you have a chance, we can meet and go further. But I do want to get some specifics about your upcoming events so we can begin to add that to our calendar and also share our calendar with you so that we can, create things as we go. But I know it's been 30 minutes. I didn't want to take much more of your time,
All
but I
right.
do want to
Yeah,
thank both of you for taking this time, and I'll send this over to you and we'll take it up from here.
all right. What I'll do is I'll send you the schedule because it's like I said, there's so much that we're doing. Like
Mhm.
next week we start our touring, so we start our tour and it goes up to Oregon and comes back down. As soon as we get back from that, then we go to Hawaii because Pato's officiating a wedding and we're doing a concert in Hawaii. And as soon as we come back from that, we're off to Africa for the first phase of Ubuntu. And that's where we go to Burundi, Uganda, Rwanda, and Kenya. And that's where we start filming the documentary on Ubuntu and the way of life and its philosophy and how it's going to, can save the world and different things. So that's what's coming up immediately.
Right.
So,
Well, please, yeah, I think that I'm sure Pato has my email address, but you have it there. But also, again, and it'll take about 20 minutes for this to process. But I'll send this over to you, and then we'll follow up from there. I love you both. Thank you so much for taking this time. I really do appreciate it.
thank
Namaste.
you. Namaste.
Namaste.
Take care. Bye-bye.